You know, for some people, actually most people, it's not just one form of mental illness that they have. Like, for example, I have ADD, ADHD, I have dyspraxia, I've got a bunch of stuff. So I would, if I was dating, which I'm not, I'm single, that would be one of the discussions I would have up front as to not then later down the line go, why don't you understand? This is the Truth Flirts with me, Mel B, a brutally honest podcast all about the highs and lows of dating. This series is brought to you by dating app Badoo, the place to date honestly. Now, we all know that dating can be a real roller coaster, right? Well, think about doing it with a mental health issue. Today, we're talking all about the highs and lows of dating while battling with your brain. With me today, I've got two guests who are well qualified to help me navigate this topic. Firstly, I want to welcome radio presenter, YouTuber and blogger Calum McSwiggan. Calum has co-produced an award-winning documentary about mental health and is a well-known voice on LGBT plus issues, mental health and relationships. So thank you for joining me, Calum.
Hi, it's great to be here.
I'm also joined by emotional health advisor Roxie Nafousi, who has worked as a celebrity stylist and is well known for speaking extensively and honestly about her own mental health struggle. Roxie, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
So we're talking about mental health issues. So let's just dive straight into it. Do you think it's fair to date when you're either going through a bad bout of mental illness or if you're just unhappy in general? Do you think it's fair to still put yourself out there? Or do you think you should remove yourself from the app until you've kind of gotten into somewhat of a safer, more healthier space?
I don't want to police anyone and tell anyone, what they can and can't do. I think everyone is entitled to date whatever state of mind they're in. But at the same time, I think, when I was going through my most difficult patch, I was just not in the right frame of mind to be dating then. Right. So I think I wish I'd taken a step back and kind of looked at the reasons I was dating, I guess, because I think I was going, okay, I'll date somebody and that will be my fix. That will be my Band-Aid and I'll be 100% better. And I was, expecting somebody to make me whole again, which was, not the right thing to do. But at the same time, if I was, going through that patch, but at the same time, I still want to pursue dating, I still want to, have a love life, then I think that would be okay too. I think it depends on the way that you're looking at it. But it's not something that's going to fix your problems, that's for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Can you tell me about your mental issues or if you have any mental issues that you're willing to talk about?
Yeah, a few years ago, I was diagnosed with clinical depression. And it was something that I really struggled to deal with to begin with. I was one of those people who thought that mental illness didn't exist. So when they were saying, you have depression, I was like, oh, that's not a real thing. So I went on quite a journey to coming to terms with that. So I was on treatment for a while and I recovered and I'm in a much better place now. But yeah, it was definitely an interesting experience to go through, to say the least.
I bet. And do you feel like now it's been diagnosed, you can handle it more and get to understand it more and be kinder to yourself at the same time?
Absolutely. I think, there was I was putting so much blame on myself. Why do you feel this way? And, and I think there's a lot of stigma surrounding it, and that comes from internal and external. And I think, just accepting that it was a real thing and learning how to deal with it and, get better, I suppose. Yeah, it was really important. But I'm in a great place now.
I know, that's good that you can talk about it because there's going to be listeners out there that are going, oh my God, okay, well, if he can say that and admit it now, I can, which is really good. And how about you, Roxie?
Yeah, I, throughout my sort of early 20s, I was really unhappy, but I was fueling it a lot with booze and drugs and
so
smoking.
Self-medicating.
And it was just this kind of wild hedonistic decade, but I was just really unhappy. And I think I didn't know it was depression at the time, but then it kind of gets to a point where you're it's not lifting and you realize that it's just always there. But on the surface and on social media, I was living such a fab life. And I basically decided that I had a social responsibility to kind of admit that it wasn't what it seemed. So I wrote an article on Marie Claire in 2016 and I was basically it was an open letter and I was I'm actually really unhappy. And at the time, mental health wasn't really being talked about. Mm-hmm. So everyone would always say, oh, you're so brave. And I kept hearing this word brave. And I was like, oh, really? Is it that brave? But now it's everyone talks about it. And actually, I feel really comfortable being open about it. And I think more and more people are talking about it without feeling nervous to say it. It's not like before. So it's been a really nice journey to watch since I opened up about it, to see society changing with it.
But it's people like you, both of you, that are helping make that shift, because it is such taboo. And even when you first started talking about it, what were your fears in admitting it not only to yourself, but to everybody else?
I just thought everyone's going to think I'm such a loser. That was my thought. I thought, this isn't very cool.
Did you think that anybody was actually going to believe you also?
Yeah, well, I thought they're just going to think, sob story. Do you know what I mean? A little bit. And so I remember going to post it and I was so nervous. But then the response was so supportive. Yeah. And that was a really big sort of shift for me. But then there was still, even though I had admitted it, to then admit it more, you kind of think, okay, when are people going to be like, okay, shut up about your depression?
People want to know more because it is such an epidemic out there.
Exactly. And I've really I've really shared my journey with my followers, and actually, they've seen my growth, and I hope that by seeing in what a good place I am now, it really inspires people, and there's like a little community where everyone's helping each other. It's really beautiful.
Well, I think that's great that you're openly, both of you, talking about it. But let me get a little bit more specific. So, what was your journey into self-healing?
I think for admitting that there was an issue to begin with, and actually going to see a doctor, which is something that, men notoriously don't like to do, and myself included. Like, I really didn't want to go to a doctor and admit that I had these issues, but actually doing that and starting to, go through the process of it. And again, like, just telling people for the first time.
And talking about it
about it. I always find it so refreshing, actually, to hear other people talk about mental health. And I think, seeing people doing it confidently and, not feeling ashamed is
guilty,
guilty. It's actually lovely to see, in a way, that, like, no, you're confident in yourself and you're owning it. And you may have some problems, but you're not ashamed of that. There's no reason to be ashamed.
Yeah, no, I agree. Now, how does that factor into when you're dating? When you're going on dating apps, when you get to that first date, when you get to the face-to-face meeting, how do you go about dealing with your own mental health issues? And when do you actually tell that person the issues that you have?
I remember going on a first date when I just started taking antidepressants. And the date actually went really well because the guy came back to my place, which was a winner. But
winner chicken dinner.
Winner chicken dinner. But he came into my bedroom, and because I hadn't expected him to come back, I'd left my antidepressants on the bedside table. And I remember feeling this, like, I was mortified. I was, like, so ashamed and embarrassed that he would see that. And I remember, like, trying to, like, throw a cushion to cover them up, but he actually did spot them and he did ask me about them.
Right.
And I just kind of, like, froze and shut down, and I thought he was going to go, oh, you have depression, you're suffering with a mental illness. And I thought he would just storm out and be like, I don't know why I thought that, because he wasn't. He was so lovely and open and accepting about it, and which is amazing. And I don't think I've ever actually had a negative experience. It's all, I think they're going to be negative, really, but it's all in my head.
Right. How about you, Roxie? What's been your...
Well, I had a long-term boyfriend at the time when I started kind of figuring out. And so because we were already together, it was a lot easier to talk about it. But my current partner now, I think on our first date, he's a very open person. He's had mental health issues in the past as well. But we're both very positive. We're both really into inner work. Like you asked earlier how I dealt with it. For me, it was yoga, it was exercise, I didn't actually see a doctor, so I didn't do it in that way. I did it in a sort of a completely different way. But I went on this journey spiritually, and he had also been on that journey. And we'd both met each other when we were at a point where we'd really kind of broken through. And so we're both really into inner work and owning our own shit. Mm-hmm. And I think when you're in a relationship and you have any kind of mental health problem. Look, we all have mental health problems at some level. It's a spectrum, okay? So we all fall on it, and we change. Sometimes we feel really low and we're going through a sort of period of depression. Doesn't mean we're a depressed person all the time. Mm-hmm. It comes and goes in waves. But it's really just knowing what's yours and what someone else's and owning it. So if I'm, having a low day or a period of time where I'm not feeling myself, it's going, okay, you know what, this isn't you, and I'm not going to blame it on you, and I'm not going to take it out on you, but this is what I'm going through. So know, so you don't think that I'm just being cold or rude. Right. You know that it's something that I'm dealing with on my own.
But then when in the series of dating do you let the cat out the bag? When do you discuss it? Do you discuss it on the first date? Do you wait to the second or third date? Or do you wait to see, like in your situation, oh God, they're back at my place, they're going to see my medication? Like, when do you think is the right time? Or even, is there a right time to discuss it?
I don't know if there is a right time. Whether you have a mental health issue or you don't, you have to be comfortable with someone. And the minute you're trying to pretend, I don't believe it's going to work. Mm-hmm. What you have to feel so comfortable that actually telling someone you have a mental health issue shouldn't even really be an issue. It should be something that you can talk about naturally.
But I think because there is so much taboo around it, I think it does have to be, in my opinion, it has to be addressed earlier than not. And that opens up my next question. Do you think you should put that on a dating app, that you have suffered from mental illness, or you're currently going through a bit of a rough phase dealing with it?
I think there are so many things that you could possibly put on a dating app. And I feel like for me, singling out that one tiny thing about me, because it is just one tiny thing about me, isn't necessarily, necessary. But at the same time, if somebody wants to do that and they want to be upfront about that and just, say it and I guess get it out the way, then good for them. I certainly wouldn't. If I saw that on a dating app, I'd be like, oh, it's really cool that this person is so open and accepting about this part of them, and that there is no shame and stigma there. But I don't think you should have to disclose it.
No, I was just saying more of what would you be willing to put out there? Because, for some people, actually most people, it's not just one form of mental illness that they have. Like, for example, I have ADD, ADHD, I have dyspraxia, I've got a bunch of stuff. So for me, it kind of already explains the way that I am without somebody going, oh my gosh, you just got too much energy. No, there's actually a reason why my brain functions differently. So I would, if I was dating, which I'm not, single. That would be one of the discussions I would have up front, as to not then later down the line go, why don't you understand me?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Now, let me ask you this. Has this ever affected you negatively when you've been open talking about it when dating?
No, it actually hasn't. I think, I don't know, I just think when you're open and vulnerable, people, I believe people are generally nice and kind.
Oh, what world do you live in? Oh my gosh. Let me tell you something.
I find that I do think people, if somebody comes and they are just showing themselves to be vulnerable, I think it is more often than not met with kindness.
I can speak from experience with that, because I'm very open and I'm very vulnerable. And that's gotten me into certain situations in relationships where somebody either takes advantage of that or they are abusive emotionally. So it can open the floodgates in a negative way for you to be put in those kind of horrible situations also. But I'm glad you've never had to experience that.
When I was thinking about this on the way here, I was thinking about the fact that quite often, look, it's kind of, there's this thing that guys say to girls, not all guys, okay, but you're crazy.
Yeah,
and it's such a common, thing to be said. It's like, oh, you're crazy. Oh, you're acting like a psycho. And these things are said really casually. But actually, if you say them to someone who's suffering from a mental health issue, that's when it really becomes it's a problem anytime. But these can be such triggering words. Yeah, and anyone that's listening who is dating, honestly, you can't say that kind of thing. No. Because if you are suffering from something like depression, anxiety, whatever it is, and someone says you're crazy, and the hurt that can cause, and
That's
then
true. That is that word particularly.
It is that word, and then
too.
That puts people off opening up about their mental health issues because they don't want someone to think, oh, I'm just crazy. Yeah. And I don't think people want to be defined by their mental health issues.
No,
people have mental health issues. Like I said, on this spectrum, we all kind of have something, but being defined by it is something that I don't think any of us should suffer.
No, you're right. What are your thoughts on that?
I've had the exact same thing, the word crazy thrown around. But I think for me, it was, I was partially responsible because with the person I'm talking about, I didn't actually open up about what I was going through.
Do you think if you had have done, it would have had a different outcome?
Yeah, because then they would have had, a chance to actually understand why I was feeling the way that I was and behaving the way that I was, because they were like, why is he suddenly out of nowhere acting out? And it was because I was, having an episode I was struggling with, but they didn't understand that. And, part of that was on me because I didn't open up about it. And I've spoken to this person since, and we've had that conversation.
That's
and
good.
He's been like, why didn't you just open up? I would have understood, and I would have been more understanding if you'd done that. So, communication is so important.
Key.
Yeah.
And in my world, in my field, what I found, being a performer and that kind of side of the entertainment world, a lot of singers have really bad anxiety. Like the most confident singer is before they walk out on stage, like having panic attacks, not being able to breathe properly. Like anxiety is huge. And I can really identify with that because before I was doing the Spice Girls concert shows, I would have Reiki healing. Like my build up to actually walking on stage to 90,000 people was meditating, was doing my vocal warm-ups, was being completely calm and quiet, getting my Reiki healing done. And everyone else would be going, what are you doing? Let's fucking get fired up. I'd be like, I need to be really calm because my anxiety is through the roof. But as soon as I got on stage, I was a different person. So it's funny how we all deal with things. Once we know what we have and we know how to be kinder to ourselves, I think it puts us in a better place all round.
Totally.
I think we're all quite guilty of comparing ourselves to others because, I might look at you on stage and be like, oh my God, how is she so together? Whereas I've not seen that behind the scenes of you doing that work and putting that work in. That goes in for the day to day. You see somebody walking down the street, they've got a spring in their step, they seem happy, they've not got a care in the world, but you don't know what's going on.
Exactly.
You don't know what steps they've put in place to get themselves there.
Right, good point. Now, have you ever dated somebody with mental health issues also?
I have dated somebody for quite a long time who had anxiety, and I knew nothing about anxiety before dating him, and I had no idea how it was terrifying to watch. I remember one time he had an anxiety attack and I just did not know what to do, and he completely shut down, and I did the wrong thing by completely internalizing it and assuming it was my fault and it was all about me, and it was nothing to do with me. But I learned a lot through that, and I wish I had been maybe a little bit more prepared.
I haven't, no, but I get asked a lot. I did do something called Agony Out Sundays on my Instagram, and I get asked a lot of people who are in relationships with people with mental health issues, and they always ask kind of, what do I do? And I think really it is that it's giving people a safe space to open up to you, and exactly what you said, knowing that it's not you, and not judging their behavior and not taking it personally. And so I haven't been through it myself, but that's the advice I would give people asking that same thing. Like, it's not fair to say, okay, you shouldn't date. But if I had to give you my personal advice, really, it's so cliche, but being happy on your own is the only way I think you can have a healthy relationship, because otherwise anytime you're expecting someone else to make you happy or fill your voids, and you do end up projecting your own insecurities, worries, unhappiness onto someone else. And it is really, like, for two people, we're all trying to just navigate through this world, and
it's a crazy world,
and when you're trying to deal with someone else's stuff and your stuff, and you're expecting them to make you happy, it's so dangerous.
I think in general, I don't think we actually do take time out to spend enough time alone.
Absolutely
to just be in our own feelings, to wake up in the morning and just deal with whatever mood we're in without going to social media or without kind of beating yourself up and looking in the mirror. I don't think we spend enough time being nice to ourselves, by ourselves, for ourselves.
We definitely don't.
Yeah.
Which is sad, really.
Yeah, I'm hosting a self-love workshop for this exact reason in a few weeks, because the way I always start my workshops is, how many of you in this room love someone unconditionally? Everybody puts up their hand. How many of you can say that you love yourselves? Honestly, are kind to yourselves, speak to yourself in a kind way. That voice, that inner critic constantly, it's like, how much do we actually watch it? Why don't you put a name on it and call it something and say, hey, excuse me, actually, you're not right.
Do you think social media has contributed to mental health issues within society, within all of us?
Yes.
Massively so.
I mean, for me, it's just the constant comparison. And
like you were saying earlier, it's comparing yourself to other people.
And it's the mindless scrolling. So I always say to people, when you're using social media, try and be mindful with it. What are you going there for? You can go on, there are positives. You can go on there to be inspired, to learn things. But what we often do is we sit down and we scroll. And as we're scrolling, we're being faced with these images that are just going into our subconscious. We're not even really taking in of perfection, beauty, you know, people doing something that we wish we were doing, or people at a party that we were not at. You know, you can be sat at home perfectly happy on a Friday night having a pizza and watching TV, and then suddenly you go on Instagram. And you go on Instagram and you're seeing all this stuff, and suddenly you question yourself and you're like, oh God, actually, am I enjoying this now? Because is there something better going on? So of course it's like that kind of state of comparison constantly on social media. It's going to affect your mental health.
Now, you did mention earlier, Roxie, that you had this fabulous life on Instagram, yet you were really unhappy inside.
Yeah.
So how have you managed to change that? Apart from being open and talking about it, but what are you now posting now as to what you were posting before?
Well, mostly what I post is stuff that I find like inspiration. Like I try to inspire people with everything I talk about. So every other post is an inspirational quote or a piece of advice. I had really bad prenatal depression and I gained 30 kilos and I was, you know, and I went through a really hard time, and I was really open about the journey, but saying that it was hard, but also showing people that there is light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, good.
It's just about, I don't want it to just be like, oh, I'm really sad. I want it to be like, yeah, I was sad and I was unhappy, but now I'm really good and this is how I've done it and this is what you can do. And that, you know, and I speak to, like, I DM people every single day about their problems and give them some, like, a safe space so that I can listen to them. And I hope that I can just encourage people to love themselves more through my platform.
I really, really have to force myself to be like really careful about like curating my social media feed and like who I follow and making conscious decisions, because I found myself, you know, I'd follow all these guys on Instagram with like amazing bodies and ripped abs. And yes, I like to look at them, but I was like, why am I really following them? And that was really, it was just a constant like comparing myself, like you'll never be this, you'll never be good enough. And so I've tried to change that up recently and follow more people like yourself, because you know, people are putting out positive messages, people who are showing their real lives and not just their highlight reels. I think we're all a little bit guilty of polishing everything up and making things look a little bit better than it perhaps is. But, you know, there are people out there who are being really honest and authentic, and they talk about the ups and the downs. And I try to follow more people like that.
The mute button is so fab.
I love the mute button.
You can mute people now.
You can mute? I just block. That's what I do. I'm like, no, you're not going to follow me again. Block. I do. Now, when you see those negative comments, what do you do? Like I just said before, I block people, and I can spend a good 10 minutes just scrolling through and actually laughing at the hate sometimes that people take time out to post on my Instagram. That's why I take great pleasure in blocking. But I mean, I actually find it funny at the same time. I don't take offence on it. How do you two feel? Because we all get it. We all get that person that's in their mother's basement going, I don't like you and what you're wearing shit and you're this and you're that. Like, why are we even bothering to write to me? Just don't follow me, unfollow me. You know what? I'll just block you. How do you two deal with it?
My favourite thing on Instagram is that when you block somebody that they don't necessarily know, so that they can still keep coming to your page and writing their hateful comments, but they're just screaming into a void because you won't see them. Nobody else will ever see them. But they're still sat there like being a little keyboard warrior. And I just think of that every single time. And it says so much more about these other people. And they can be really hateful and they can like find just insecurities and really try to prey on them. But at the end of the day, it's not about you. The fact that they're coming there in the first place, it's usually like jealousy. I know it's like the oldest thing people say, but it really, really is.
I think for me, sometimes I just think, well, that's definitely my ex. Block again. And then they set up another account. I'm like, you've got 3 followers. You're definitely my ex. It's bad. Taking it on a different angle, talking about dates, what has been your worst dating experience?
So one time, and it was quite not that long after I'd started taking antidepressants, I found that there were some side effects that were not a little bit unexpected of taking the antidepressants, and that was that I was unable to climax during sex. And I first realized this when I was with a guy for the first time, and I didn't expect it to happen. I instantly was like, oh my God, what is wrong with me?
Whilst it was going on, were you sensing that this is not actually going to go anywhere climatic wise?
The thing was, I didn't like connect it to the fact that I was taking medication at the time, and I put like all of this like shame on myself and like panicking and freaking out about it. And I wish more people had opened up about like the different things that can happen when you take medication and things.
Didn't that say on the side effects? Not that we always read the side effects on everything and anything, but was that one of them?
Yeah, it was. But there was also like 30 other side effects listed. So I
Amongst you could die if you take this.
So yeah, I didn't read through all the side effects, but it went away after a couple of weeks. I spoke to my doctor about it, and it was completely fine. But yeah, that was an unexpected one.
Have you had any bad dating experiences? I know not now because you're very happy.
Yeah, there are definitely dates that have been like so awkward, or they've tried to kiss you on a first date when it's totally unexpected and not appropriate.
I don't think you should kiss on a first date necessarily. Yeah. He's like, why not?
Oh gosh, yeah, I do more than kiss.
Oh my God.
Sorry. Yeah, I do. I'm sorry.
Nearly all the way.
I feel like it's quite common amongst gay men. I don't know why.
But not necessarily all gay men.
No. And I've had some absolutely wonderful first dates where we've like not even like held hands or anything. It's just been chat. Yeah. And I've also had wonderful first dates where we've gone all the way. I think there shouldn't be rules. I think just go with it.
If there's a connection and it organically happens. I mean, I've been on dates where there is that awkward kiss at the end and I've dodged it, gone, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Because you can see their brain going, okay, it's nearly at the end of the date, I'm going to lean forward. And you're like, I can see what you're doing. Just stop.
Yes.
Like it's ridiculous. Let's talk about online dating. So I'm sure you've heard of catfishing, when a person takes someone else's identity and pretends to be them online. Yeah, creepy, right? Dating app Badoo has a seriously high-tech account verification system that checks everyone's profile to make sure they're a real human being. So you'll never fall in love with a phony. So according to Badoo research, men are almost 2 times more likely than women to discuss the fact that they have mental illness on their profile. Now that's a surprise to me.
Yeah,
men are more
likely
likely than women.
Yeah. I wonder why that is.
You know what? Maybe it's because men put a lot of pressure on women, and maybe men can be quite judgmental towards women sometimes about mental health, and maybe women have kind of... I'm generalising, I know.
Well, no, if a man's been forthright with it, maybe they just want to get that on the table, put all the cards on the table now so it's not so much of a shock. But I would have thought it would have been in the reverse.
Yeah.
I thought it would have been women that weren't that happy to share it on their profile. I'm not talking in the first date or in a conversation, actually on their profile.
I think on the whole, we expect men to disclose less than women. But when it comes to dating, maybe women are just a little bit more worried about how they appear.
Have you seen the documentary by Jessie from Little Mix?
Oh,
yes. Have you seen that?
I was in
she
tears.
talks about trolling and the effect that it has on people's mental health and the effect that it's had on her, because she got bullied quite a lot online, and she talks about it quite openly now. I mean, they were calling her the fat, ugly one in the group, and I mean, it was relentless. For years, it did not stop, so she decided to make a whole documentary about it and bring it to the forefront, because trolling and bullying online is awful and very cowardly done also.
Yeah, it was such an unbelievable documentary, and I thought she was so honest and open and vulnerable. And what was the most kind of concerning was that she was talking about how she had been a really confident young girl, and it was the trolling that had changed her.
Yeah.
She had such an intense self-loathing, which, and you could see that what she was talking about when she has photo shoots and videos, how hard it is for her, and her bandmates seemed very aware of her mental health, or I don't know if mental health is the right word, but they were very aware of how much she kind of hated herself.
But that's because of the trolling.
Because of the
it
trolling.
Affected her that much. And that's interesting that you said that she came into it as a really confident girl.
Yeah. And I think that is so sad. And I think that is the thing, is like, as children, right, we are really confident when we're young.
And carefree.
Yeah. And
gets beaten out of
and
us.
I always think when I talk, it's about getting back to our authentic childlike selves, because life kind of bashes us in a way. And then we lose that confidence. And trolling is one of the ways that happens. And people are just so thoughtless. They think that behind a screen, like, it makes it okay. How much would people be saying that, if it was face to face?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just nasty.
I do think we all as well, like we talk about our own mental health when we're using the internet, but actually we should think about other people's as well, because I think every single one of us is guilty of at some point going online and saying something mean about somebody else. Like I've not done it. I
haven't done that. I actually
good for you,
done that.
because I will put my hands up and say that I have. You know, a few years ago, I might see a movie that I didn't like and I might tweet like, oh, this actor was terrible. And it's like, why am I going on the internet to put negativity out there? And it's something that I recognize in myself, something that I've seen in other people. I have a rule now, which is I'm not allowed to say anything negative about anyone online.
That's good.
And I do often find myself, you know, little moments where I'm like, oh, I want to, especially with like call out culture, cancel culture. It's so easy to jump on the bandwagon and start attacking and criticizing people. I'm not allowed to do it. I stop myself from doing it because I think we all need to be helping to make the internet a better, nicer place for everyone.
I find it much harder when I see people being mean or unappreciative or just even rude to people. I'm like, how much energy is that actually taken out of you when you could have just smiled or just signed that autograph or just said please or thank you? So much easier to be like that. It's harder to be the other way, I think.
I agree.
I really do. Do you feel that you should put on social media like who you're dating or share with, you know, your followers how in love you are or how not in love you are, how you're searching or not searching?
I think it's up to the individual what they do. I keep that locked down. Like I don't let anyone know who I'm dating. Like I was dating this guy for about 6 months, about a year ago. And every now and then I would be like date night. And once there was a picture of his hands. And that's as far as like it went. And like, and everyone was like wanted to know who it was and desperate to find out who it was. But for my own like personal sanity, I kept it private. But then at the same time, I like follow people who are like in like brand new relationships where they've only been dating for like 2 months and they're posting all cute pictures.
We're in
and
love.
I'm like, good for you. Like, enjoy it. And I like to see that. Like, it's nice. It's lovely.
Yeah.
So either's fine for me.
There you go. How about you?
Yeah, I didn't used to share it actually at all, but with my boyfriend now, actually, we have kind of an epic love story, and it's kind of fun and exciting, and I was never someone that was into like any public displays of affection at all. But now I'm so comfortable and I am so in love, and I want to show all parts of my life.
And how about your baby? Because you just recently had a baby, 4 months old.
Yeah, I shared that too. He's so cute.
And then talking about you being a mum, you said that you suffer from postnatal depression.
Prenatal, which I didn't know was a thing because I didn't know I was pregnant. And the reason I found out was because I was feeling really low, and I'd only been with my boyfriend 3 months at the time. And I was like, well, I'm really low, but I shouldn't be because I'm in a new relationship. Work's going really well. Everything's good. And I was like, God, I'm feeling really odd, didn't we? Getting really tired, kept having naps. And then my sister's like, you sure you're not pregnant? And I was like, no, definitely not. Anyway, it turns out I was. But that's how I knew that it was the hormones. It wasn't sort of because I found out that I got depressed. It was the other way around because I felt depressed before I found out.
Right.
And it was really, it was really bad. But I wasn't aware of prenatal depression. I only knew about postnatal.
Yeah, me too. That's why I went straight to post.
Yeah, because that's what everybody thinks of. But yeah, it was a really dark time for me, the darkest. But it made me step back from like my whole life, and everything changed from, it's true, from the darkness, does come the light, and it's been the most incredible journey to evolve through that, and take a step back from partying and all that kind of all those things that really actually I thought made me happy, but really didn't, and we're just continuing. Quite negative patterns for me, and now I've come out the other side.
But that's interesting that you say that you speak about it like that, because that's actually, I think, the key elements of advice to be able to give, coming from where you've come from, both of you, and now coming out of it. You're both willing to talk about it, which there's so much taboo around mental health, period. I think the more that we can talk about it, the more we can discuss it, the more we can just in a regular Friday night out, pre-drinks with your friends, talk about it. I'm raising 3 girls. My youngest is 7, my middle is 12, and my eldest is 20. And I'm constantly like reassuring them with confidence, but making them feel confident themselves. And that if you are going through a dark phase or period, just to talk about it. Sometimes all you need to do is just talk about it.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, you do. And if someone comes to you, I always say, like, try not to give them advice sometimes. Just some people just want to vent.
Listen.
They just want to let it out. Just giving people a space of like non-judgment is the best thing we can do for each other.
I wish we approached like social media and dating apps with like a sense of positivity. Like, oh, I'm going to go on Instagram now because I want to be inspired, or I want to like look at some like beautiful pictures of somebody's day or whatever it is. And the same thing about dating apps. Like, I want to go on this dating app because I'm really excited about the prospect of meeting a lovely person and maybe we'll go on a lovely date. Because I think a lot of the time we don't do that. We pick up social media and we're not in a good place.
Oh my God, did you see what she just put?
Exactly.
What does she look like?
Exactly.
What are they doing?
Yeah, you're right.
And now, when it comes to dating apps, do you believe what the other person has already posted up or put up on their app? Or do you then check their social media straight after that? Or do you then talk to your friends and go, have you heard about this person? Like,
I like to go in blind. I like to like take what they say on their profile and like believe it, and then get information out of them rather than going to stalk it down. But I will say, before the date, I always have to do a little hunt. So like put their name in Google, find everything I can on them before the date. But then on the date, you have to pretend like you don't know every detail about their life.
I've definitely fucked up there.
Oh, you went travelling in Africa. I definitely haven't already seen all the pictures.
I presumed you did. That is funny.
So true.
Do you check your ex's Instagram?
In a positive way, I do. I love my exes.
I'm a good old nosy.
I hate the stigma around like we have to like treat our exes as our absolute worst enemies. One of my exes is my worst enemy, but all the others, I actually like have a really healthy, lovely response to them. And like this guy that I dated for years is now like in this really loving relationship. They're engaged now, and it honestly brings me nothing but joy to see that. So I'm stalking it in a positive way.
Right, that's good, and I'm glad you admitted that.
Yeah.
How about you?
I am friends with all my exes. I mean, my ex before waited off 3 years is now honestly one of my best friends. He loves my baby. We hang out.
Oh, that's really nice.
I just think, I mean, look, some people have really bad relationships and have really bad exes, and so of course you are not going to be friends with them.
Yeah, I have one of those.
Yeah.
So, and that is like totally understandable. You don't want that person. And in that case, I would say block them. Do not check their social media.
Yeah, no.
Do not have them in your mind. But if you haven't ended on like really terrible terms and anything bad has happened, then they know you better than most of your friends. There's there's an intimacy, and there's a way that they get to know your family, and and how sad to like lose that friendship. And ultimately, friendships,
good.
Yeah, and friendship is at the basis of every relationship. So if you can maintain that afterwards, I think it's like the best thing.
That's good. Now, how do you both stay mentally healthy? I know you mentioned before you're very much about working on your inner core.
Yes.
So can you just give us a few like tips of advice?
For me, it's healthy eating, exercising, meditating, yoga, constantly questioning myself. If something was to upset me or stress me out, just why? What was the trigger? Where did that really come from? Am I really upset about this, or is it something else? Just constantly question yourself, constantly get to work on yourself. I listen to positive affirmations every morning and every night to get into my subconscious.
That's really good.
Self-love and working on yourself should be as important as any other area of your life. And I really dedicate time to it.
See, you're good. You must be very strict with that kind of stuff, because that sounds lovely, but I do think it's easier said than actually done. To actually wake up every morning and try, especially if you're having a bit of a crappy day, to try and get your brain into kickstarting in a positive way can be a struggle sometimes.
Of course it's hard. It's the hardest. Like when you're feeling low, and especially if you're feeling depressed, you know what it's like. Getting out of bed is hard.
Yeah, it is.
Checking your emails is hard. But that's where you've got to show up for yourself.
And push through.
And don't make excuses for yourself. Literally 5 minutes is like enough. That's a good start. Doing your beauty care routine in the morning, doing your skincare, like putting some moisturizer on. That's like an active meditation. Going for a walk, listening to a podcast, taking your mind off it. There are so many ways you can love yourself and do it for yourself. You deserve it. We can love other people so much more successfully if we love ourselves first. Yeah. Like you can love someone in a relationship more. You can love your children more. You can love your family more. If you're happy.
I do this with my dog too. I feed my dog first before I feed myself. I'm like, what is going on?
But if that love is within you, you are going to beam a positive energy for all the people around you.
Yeah.
So it's not selfish. It's the opposite of selfish.
Tell me, what's your tip-top advice?
For me personally, I think it's always getting to the root of why I feel the way I do, but that goes for positives and negatives. So, because I think it isn't something that we do very often. If we feel sad, we often just go, oh, okay, I'm sad today. And we don't actually sit down and think about why. Now I can kind of gauge why I'm feeling a certain way and take the time out to do that, but also take note of the positive things. Because I think that's something we neglect all the time. We always dwell on why we feel sad, why we feel down, why we feel angry. We never stop to think, you know what, I feel really good today. I feel happy. Why is that? What is it in my life that is giving me that? And focus on that, do that more.
You see, you two sound really, really highly intelligent with the way that your own brains work. And not everybody is fortunate enough to be able to dissect and do that for themselves. So I do think, even if it's group counselling or your local therapist and talking to other people that have some kind of a professional background in to be able to just help you get to a point where you understand how your own brain works. Because sometimes we're in such denial and we don't want to, if I admit that to you, that means I've got to admit it to myself, but admitting it to myself, where do I even start? And that can leave people in a massive big void of there's no way of even crawling out. So I do think that therapy is really, really helpful for a lot of people.
I did over a year's worth of therapy.
Oh,
so,
wow,
I spent a
great.
lot of time talking to people, and you don't just magically come to these conclusions and magically able to feel this well-adjusted, I guess.
Yeah. Now, I do want to narrow it down a bit because I want you to be able to help me give advice with juggling mental health issues and dating, because a lot of people put themselves out there. Maybe some are more ready than others. Maybe some people don't even know they're going through a bout or a dark phase when it comes to mental health and mental issues. So what advice would you give to those people?
I think my advice to people who are suffering and who are trying to date is really, it has to come back again, and I say it again, to self-worth, self-love. Just be really careful. You might not be ready. And just admitting that to yourself might be the best thing that you can do. Actually, when you go into a date, I was saying this to someone the other day, rather than going to the date and going, God, I hope they like me. What about going, I hope I like them. Let's see if they're good enough for me. Yeah. Once you flip that and you go in to see if they're good enough for you rather than you're good enough for them, the whole date's going to change. The whole way you look at it, the way you talk, the way you present yourself, you're going to be in such a stronger position. And that's you're looking for someone that's right for you. You're not looking to just be right for someone.
I was going to say, just give yourself a little bit of slack. I'm so guilty for turning up to a date and having such ridiculously high expectations. I'm literally first date, okay, this is going to be the man that I marry. This
you're
has
so
to be,
positive.
I'm this has to be the best date ever. And it's you know what? Just dates are supposed to be fun.
They are meant to be fun.
And one thing I always like to do on a date is to think of something that I really, really want to do, something that I would go and do on my own and do that, and then just bring somebody along with me, because then, you know what, if it doesn't work out, if they turn out to be awful, if they don't like me,
enjoy myself
doesn't matter.
anyway.
I'm still enjoying the zoo. I love the zoo.
I love that.
Well, that was such an interesting chat. Thank you so much to Calum McSwiggan and Roxie Nafousi for joining me on today's episode of the Truth Flirts. And to you, listener, please do subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever else you get your podcast fix. And if you like what you heard, then leave us a review. Join the conversation by following @Badoo UK on Instagram, and don't forget to download the app, where there's a world of honest daters waiting for you.